Welcome to this video and thank you for watching. We're going to be explaining the University of Cambridge admissions process, which is being put on by Downing College. So Downing is one of 31 colleges that makes up the University of Cambridge, and you can see a picture here of our site in the centre of Cambridge. So Downing was founded in 1800 by Sir George Downing, and we're a medium-sized college. So we have around 450 undergraduate students, and we offer all subjects taught at the University of Cambridge. So just a quick introduction. My name is Catriona and I'm the Access and Wine Participation Manager here at the college. And I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Cameron Eunice, who's our admissions tutor, and he's going to be explaining more about the admissions process today.
Thank you very much, Catriona, for the introduction, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody. What I'd like to do in the next few slides is really go through in detail the Cambridge admissions process and try and provide information about key bits of questions that students normally ask when preparing their application to the university. So what I'd like to start off by doing is really talk through the key steps involved in preparing your application to the university. So there's a number of things that students need to think about when preparing their application. And one of the key things I always advise students to really think hard about and do their research on is the course that they want to apply to. At the university, there's a number of courses on offer, and they cover over 65 subject areas. So it's really important to research the subject you're interested in and make sure you pick the right course that actually fits the interests that you would like to explore at higher education. So one of the key things I would always advise students is to spend a bit of time going through the prospectus and looking at all the courses on offer before making a decision about which one they want to apply to. The next thing students need to think about is about the college they wish to apply to. At Cambridge, applications are reviewed and processed by the colleges, not the university. So students need to think about which college they'd like to apply to. And there are a number of colleges in Cambridge, and so there's a lot of choice there. The key thing to remember is all colleges offer the same academic experience to students, but every college has their own sort of unique environment, and in that respect, they offer a very sort of different flavor of student life experience for students. So do spend a bit of time looking around and doing your research to make sure you pick the right college that sort of fits your interests, and you could see it being a good fit for you if you see yourself studying there for 3 or 4 years. Having said that, many students don't like to have to go through the stress of trying to pick a college, and that's absolutely fine. You can prepare an open application to the university, and what would happen in that scenario is the university will essentially randomly allocate you to a college which has had a low number of applications in that year, and then your application will be reviewed by that college. In terms of a student making an open application or a direct application to college, there is no difference. They are absolutely treated the same way, so you shouldn't worry about that at all. The next thing students need to think about is the admissions tests and assessments. Go on to the college website, have a look at the course that you're thinking of applying to, make sure you understand what are the requirements for that course that you're making an application for. Some subjects, which I'll be telling you about a little bit later on in the slides, have a pre-admissions assessment, which you have to register for. Some assessments have an at-interview assessment. And some colleges have particular requirements for certain types of submitting written work as well. So again, you need to research the course that you're applying to and the college you're applying to make sure you understand what registrations for tests or deadlines that you need to meet for any kind of assessments. So please do make sure you look into that. The other thing is once you've gone through picking a college and choosing your course, you need to be aware about the UCAS application deadline to Cambridge and Oxford. This year, the deadline is going to be on the 16th of October, not the 15th of October, so you have an extra day. But please make sure your application to UCAS is submitted by that deadline. Once the university has received your application, we then will process all the applications, and the university will then invite you to start putting some more information about yourself on what is known as a My Cambridge application. So this is a portal where we're going to be asking you some extra information. And the key thing here is we're just trying to gather more information about you, which we won't be able to get from the UCAS application form. To kind of give you an example, we'll ask you to put down the modules you've studied so far in your A-level course, so we have that information to hand when reviewing your application. Next thing that would happen is once your application has been received by the college which is reviewing your application, they will get in touch with further information and things that they need from you as part of the application. In some cases, some subjects, we would ask students to submit some written work or take an at-interview test. So in those situations, the colleges will be getting in touch with you to pass on more information about what's required for that. And I'll be telling you a little bit more information about this later on in the slides. Once we've got all the information that we need, that could be your test scores, that could be the submitted written work you've sent in, all the information that you've uploaded on the My Cambridge application, as well as the information on your UCAS form, we'll then be able to review your application. And by the end of November, we'll be making decisions about which applicants we're going to invite for an interview. Now, the interviews take place in the first 2 weeks of December, and we'll be informing any candidates who've been shortlisted for an interview before the interview dates were to start. And so once you'll receive your letter, if you are invited for an interview, it will have information about what dates your interview is going to be taking place, how long your interview is going to be, and most likely who are your interviewers going to be, who are going to be conducting your interviews for you. Once we've done the interviews, we'll then take that information as well, and then take all of the information that we've gathered so far about your application to make a decision about whether we're going to be making you an offer to come and study a particular subject at the college, to study at the university. And those decisions will be announced middle to the end of January, and that's when the application process comes to an end. So hopefully in this slide, what I've tried to do is illustrate the steps involved in preparing your application to the university and the key sort of timelines and deadlines that you need to be aware of when you are making an application to the University of Cambridge.
Thank you, that's really helpful. So could you tell us how many courses are on offer at the University of Cambridge?
Thank you very much, Katrina, for the question. There are 31 courses on offer at the university. They're all listed out in this slide here. The key thing to note is that there are many courses which Cambridge offer, which aren't found at other universities around the country, such as land economy, linguistics. These are quite specialist courses, but there are a range of courses on offer at the university here.
Brilliant. And how would you go about choosing your course? What would you recommend students do?
So in terms of choosing your course, the key thing is I'd always advise students to spend a bit of time going over the website for the individual courses. So every course will have its own website. So please go on to those websites and read through the course syllabus, see what the type of things you're going to be taught through the course. The other thing is try and look up any kind of activities or outreach activities in particular, which are going to be happening around this next few months leading over to the summer period, where students can actually come and attend webinars, which are subject specific ones, subject master classes, which provide taster lectures about particular courses. There's also the University Open Days, which will be happening in July. So there's lots of different sort of activities and events which will be taking place over the next few months. And I would definitely encourage applicants to come to the university or register for some of these events which are taking place online.
Yeah, definitely do come and attend those if you can do, and have a look at that. So you mentioned already that you applied to a college. So what actually is a college and what does it offer?
That's a very good question. So a college, at Cambridge, there are 31 colleges, and they all offer a range of different facilities and support for students whilst they're studying here at the university. For example, every college will have its own library and study spaces. As well as that, they are responsible for providing all the accommodation for the undergraduate students whilst they're studying their degree at the university. Most colleges will guarantee accommodation for the first 3 years of your undergraduate course. As well as that, many college accommodation facilities will have cooking facilities on site as well. These are some images of some of the sort of facilities which are on offer at Downing in these slides. And as well as that, there are communal spaces around the college. And then next slide, the image shown in this slide here is the sort of main dining hall. And every college will have a formal dining hall where there will be lots of gatherings arranged for students to come and socialize and sit down and meet each other, as well as meet some of the fellows and director of studies who will be supporting them whilst they're studying here at the college and university. And as well as this, there are a lot of common rooms facilities in the colleges available as well. So every college will have a junior common room, which is a space for undergraduate students to get together, socialize and relax. In this slide here, there's an image of a cafe and bar and common room, which Downing College has, which provides an open space for students to come, have some snacks or sometimes even lunch, as well as grab a cup of coffee and find a quiet corner to sit down and study, or a place to sit down and socialize with friends during their breaks, so during the day. And as well as this, every college will have a range of recreational facilities. At Downing, we have our own theatre. We also have lots of sports facilities around the college. We also have an indoor rowing tank as part of our boat club for the college. And all these facilities are made available to students while they're studying here at the university. As well as all these facilities and places around the college also is very focused on providing pastoral support. So when you start your undergraduate degree at the university, the first thing you'll be doing is arriving at your college and you'll be settling into your accommodation. And the very first two people you'll get to meet at the college, one is going to be your personal tutor and one is going to be your director of studies. What the personal tutor does is provides pastoral care for students, and they're responsible for providing support and advice and guidance for students throughout their period of their studies whilst they're studying at the college. Examples can include students sometimes while they're studying run into financial hardship, and a personal tutor can be there to provide some advice and in many cases make the application on behalf of the student to get a bursary or a hardship grant to cover any kind of shortfall in finances. Other examples include things like if a student becomes very unwell close to the exams, the tutor will be there to provide support and representation for the student so they can have some examination allowances put in place. In kind of complementary to that, Director of Studies is there to provide support for students in terms of their academic studies. So they're there to try and act as a mentor throughout their undergraduate degree to make sure they're on track with their academic work and are performing at the academic standards that is expected of them. Last thing, there are a number of societies that colleges offer, and this is an opportunity for students to indulge in activities and hobbies or develop new hobbies whilst they're studying during their undergraduate degree. So really, to kind of summarize your question, Katrina, the college is a space where students can come and live, eat, dine, socialize, explore interests and hobbies, as well as get a lot of support from the college in terms of academic work, and as well as pastoral support.
Brilliant, that's really helpful. Thank you for the explanation of what a college is. So you've mentioned as well that there's 31 colleges at Cambridge. So how do you choose from all of that? There's a huge number to choose from, and can you choose any?
Yeah. So that's a very good point, question. And a lot of students ask this question when they're making their application. How do I go about choosing a college? Now, my answer to that question is that it's a personal choice. I always advise any applicant who's thinking of applying to the university to come to one of the open days if they can, and actually come with a checklist of key things that they would like their college to have. That could be the food, it could be the accommodation, it could be the location. Is it close to the faculty where I'm going to be studying? It could be the sports facilities. You really need to have your own checklist. It could be the fellows in the subject that you're interested in studying. Are they doing research in areas which really fascinate you? Those are all of your own personal checklists. So I would always advise students to come with that checklist and then go and visit a few colleges and see which one ticks all the boxes for them, really. And really, the idea is, you know, like I said before, every college provides the same academic experience to students, but they have different sort of flavors of college life. So some students like a college which has got a large student community. Some colleges, students would like a college which has a small student community. So therefore, different colleges are different sizes as well. That's another criteria. So just come and visit the colleges, walk around, get a feel for the environment, get a feel for the people, and see which one clicks for you and you see yourself fitting in well. At the end of the day, you're going to spend 3 or 4 years of your life studying at that college. So you need to make sure it's the one where it clicks for you and it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. Are there any restrictions then, ones that you can apply to in terms of like age or gender, or do all the colleges offer every subject?
So that's a very good question as well. It's very important to check the college website to make sure that it offers a course that you want to study. Some colleges don't offer certain courses which the university offer. Majority of the colleges do offer all the courses on offer at the university. So that's one thing. The other thing is there are 2 colleges which are women-only colleges. And then the last thing is there are 2 or 3 colleges which are mature colleges, which are designed for mature students and are aimed at the students who are of a particular age or and above. So you need to kind of look around, make sure that the college that you're considering you meet their entry requirements.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really helpful. So if the college does offer the subject that I'm looking at, are there any colleges that are better for that subject that I might be interested in applying to more?
I wouldn't really say that's the case. Historically, if you do look at the Cambridge colleges, you will notice some colleges are popular for particular subjects. For example, at Downing has always been very popular for law for historical reasons. As well as that, it's very popular for engineering. The reason why it's so popular for engineering is literally it is next door to the Department of Engineering. Likewise, for natural sciences, it's very centrally located to all the departments where you'll be going for your lecturing and your teaching. So again, a lot of students apply for natural sciences at Downing. But there isn't any particular college that is better for a particular subject compared to another one. Like I mentioned before, the academic experience you have, no matter which college you apply to, is going to be identical because most of your teaching and learning is going to be done at the faculties or the departments.
Brilliant. And if I can't choose, there's kind of 1 or 2 that I'm kind of choosing in between, am I able to rank them and kind of apply to more than one and say, oh, Downing's my first choice and this college is my second choice, or can you apply to more than one?
Unfortunately, no, you can only apply to one college. So you have to think about this quite carefully and pick your college based on which one fits the criteria best for what you're looking for.
And the open application that you mentioned before, is there any sort of advantage in doing this? I know you said you'd be treated the same, but is there sort of an advantage in doing that route?
There is no advantage of doing that route. Like I mentioned, once we receive your application, whether it's a direct application or an open application, your application will be reviewed and treated identical in the same way.
Brilliant, that's really helpful. So I've kind of got everything I need to know about colleges. So I've kind of got my UCAS application ready. Could you tell us a little bit more about what actually goes into the UCAS application?
So, so what goes into how to apply to Cambridge? So what goes into your UCAS application? So the key thing you need to know about when you're preparing your UCAS application, the first thing is that in your application, you will have to choose to make an application to 5 different universities. So when you're thinking about choosing your universities, the key thing to think about is the subject you're thinking of applying for and which universities are known and good for those subjects. That's the first thing. The second thing you need to think about is if you're thinking of applying to Cambridge or Oxford, you can only make your application to one of those universities. and there could be one of your 5 choices that you apply to. You unfortunately cannot apply to Cambridge and Oxford as for any, one of your choices of your top 5 universities. If you are thinking of applying to Cambridge or Oxford, the other thing you need to think about is the application deadline, which is, like I mentioned before, is much more earlier. So you need to make sure you get your application submitted before the 16th of October. Other universities, the deadline for applications for UCAS are later on. So please do make sure you are aware of the earlier deadline for Cambridge or Oxford.
Brilliant. That's really helpful to kind of go through that. So in UCAS then, you put in sort of the grades that you have already got. And I know some students are often quite concerned about their GCSE grades, maybe that they haven't got straight 9s. How much weighting do you put on GCSE grades? Do you look at them? What do you sort of expect to see?
So that's a very good question there. The university entry requirements is very clear. It's based on students achieving 3 A-level grades. Having said that, we do review a number of things when we're reviewing an application, and that includes your academic track record up till now. So what grades you've achieved in your academic studies up to now will be looked at and considered, as well as what grades you've been predicted for any studies that you are in the process of doing, such as your A-levels or IB.
And you said it's based on 3 A-level grades. So what if you're doing 4 A-levels? Is that an advantage or?
A lot of students ask that question. Would I be an advantage if I'm doing 4 A-levels or more than 4 A-levels? My answer to that question is that the application process and the entry requirements is based on 3 A-level grades, not 4. So if you are studying 3 A-levels, you're not at a disadvantage. But having said that, if you have the opportunity to take a 4th A-level, I would definitely encourage students to think about that, mainly because it's only going to put you through a much more rigorous academic workload. And once you arrive to university, your workload's only going to go up. So if you get into that frame of mind, and now at a much earlier stage, is only going to help prepare you for university life.
Yeah, that's really helpful to know and kind of take into account. Thank you. Another opportunity students sometimes have is doing an extended project qualification, also known as an EPQ. Yeah. Is this something that is sort of seen really favourably by the university? Do you like to see this, and should students do it if they've got the opportunity?
So an EPQ is an example of a supercurricular activity. And when I say supercurricular activity, an example of an activity where you're exploring your subject beyond your A-level or IB curriculum that you're learning at school or college. So it's definitely worth doing because it's broadening your context around the subject area that you're interested in, and actually helps you develop some sort of critical thinking skills, analytical skills, depending on the topic you're trying to research. Another thing, it really does provide a good opportunity to talk about, gives you a focus point to talk about sometimes in your personal statement, and really discuss how you've gone about researching the subject you wanted to apply to at university.
Brilliant, that's really helpful. I think for most students with the UCAS application, the sort of hardest part is actually writing the personal statement. Would you be able to explain kind of what a personal statement is and kind of what you're looking for when you read them?
Yeah, that's a very good question as well. A lot of students do spend a lot of time worrying about their personal statement, and it's very important that they actually put a lot of effort into this, because the statement, the name and the title tells you everything. It is a personal statement. It gives us an impression of you whilst reading your application. Most of the applications we receive at Cambridge have very, very good academic grades. The students would have done very well in their GCSEs, would have good predicted grades. Their school reference would be glowing, and the teachers will be saying very good things about them. So the only thing the first thing we kind of, when we read the personal statement, it allows us to start in getting an understanding of an application on an individual basis. So it's really important that you do spend time writing your personal statement. One thing I always advise students to do is when they're preparing this personal statement is to think about writing it in a way where they are talking about something that they want to tell us about. Don't spend too long worrying or thinking about what you think we would like to read about, because that's not important. We really want to know more about why you're interested in a particular subject. So it's keep it direct, keep it relevant, talk about why you're so passionate about a certain subject and why is it you want to explore it at higher education. You only have a limited number of words, so try and make sure you keep the personal statement very concise and to the point. And the sort of the key things that I always ask students to ask themselves when they're writing the personal statement: does what you've written reflect your academic ability and potential? Does it demonstrate how motivated you are for a course, and demonstrate why you're suited to a particular type of course, and really shows your commitment and self-discipline for wanting to pursue that at higher education? And one other thing I always ask students is, ask yourself these questions and then give your personal statement to someone to read, and then ask them, does my personal statement reflect and answer these key criteria? So if I was looking through your personal statement, there are a number of things that we try and look through when we are reading your personal statement. And the key thing that we want to do is look for specific evidence or examples of how you've researched your subject area and your interests. So talk about things you've done. Talk about how you've researched your subject area. Talk about how any kind of, like for example, if you're applying for a STEM subject, any kind of Olympiads you've taken part in and how you performed in them. The key thing is really try and focus on specific examples of how you've researched your subject area and talk about what you've taken away from that experience and how that's led to you wanting to study that subject at higher education. The key thing is we want to be able to see how you've thought about the course that you want to study and how you've actually explored it in a much more broader context, how you've gone beyond what you've learned so far at school to really research that subject area. And the last thing I'd always advise students is to spend about 2/3 of their personal statement talking about the subject that they're interested in studying at university, but do allow 1/3 of the personal statement and in the end to talk about extracurricular activities. Because this personal statement is not just going to be used for your application at Cambridge, is also going to be used in your application to other universities, and other universities in many cases are interested in seeing what extracurricular activities you're doing.
That's really helpful to kind of focus in on the academics and know to do that. Often students will ask sort of how many books you'd expect to see sort of referenced in a personal statement. Do you have sort of a number or? So
that's something which you often see in personal statements where students talk about, I'm interested, I'll just give you an example. I'm very interested in chemistry and I have read the following books, and then list out a number of books that they've read around chemistry, which is fantastic. It shows that the students really spend a long time researching their subject area. But what is more helpful is if they pick out 1 or 2 of those books and talk about them in more detail. Pick one of the books that they've read or articles that they've read and talk about what was it that really fascinated them about that article, and how that and what they've learned from that experience, and how that then has led to them to decide to apply for that particular subject. That gives us much more insight about how you really thought about the subject and how you reflected on the things you researched about that subject.
Yeah, that's really helpful too. So if I was writing a personal statement, I wanted to make it stand out from others, how would I do that? Obviously keeping within the guidance of sort of 2/3 subject based, but how would I really draw your attention, I suppose?
Okay, the first thing is a lot of students think that they need to spend a lot of time writing the first 2 sentences to make them sound very, very impressive and to create an impact. That's something which isn't needed. We have to read lots of these personal statements. So start off talking about things that you want to talk about. So how do you make your personal statement stand out? In my opinion, the best way to make it stand out is trying to write it in a way which is very honest and very direct about what is it that really fascinates you about your subject area. So keep it to the point and keep it relevant to the things you're fascinated about and interested about to talk about.
Brilliant. I would say as well, we've got lots of resources, haven't we, on how to write a personal statement on our website. So I'd encourage students to go and have a look at those as well. So I guess the next part of the admissions process is admissions assessments. Could you talk a little bit more about maybe which subjects require them? And yeah.
Yeah. So the pre-admissions assessments do occur for a number of subjects, and they're listed out on this slide here. Most of them are for the science subjects, but there is also economics there and law, which have a pre-admissions assessment. So when we talk about pre-admissions assessments, these are tests that students have to do as part of their application to the university. And we use these test scores in conjunction with all the other information we've got so far from UCAS and your My Cambridge application to make a decision about whether we would invite you for an interview. So the key thing to remember is that there's lots of resources available online about these tests, lots of past papers available online for these tests. So do go and look through these past papers and make sure you familiarize yourself with the format of the test, but also make sure you understand what the registration deadlines are for the tests. And you could see for all the tests which we require, apart from law, the registration deadline is the 29th of September, which is much earlier than your UCAS deadline of the 16th of October for your application. So please make sure you register for your test in time.
Yeah, what would happen if I missed that deadline?
If you were to miss the application deadline, registration deadline for the test, unfortunately, your application would be invalid and we will not be able to consider your application any further. So it's very important that you do not miss this registration deadline.
Yeah, definitely really important. Yeah, so I definitely talk to your UCAS coordinator in school to make sure they know that you're going to apply to Cambridge and for one of these subjects. What about the other subjects then? Are there admissions assessments for them?
So that's a good thing to point out as well. Other subjects, they may have some form of assessments occurring as well. These sometimes are known as at-interview assessments. And so I've listed here some subjects which will have those. But that on the table here on the left-hand side, you can see subjects like archaeology, architecture, classics, English, history and modern languages, history of art, linguistics, modern medieval languages, philosophy and theology. They all have a test which you have to do as part of the process if you are shortlisted for an interview. So these are candidates which have been already selected for interview, then they have to sit this test as part of the interview process. So the test would normally take place before the interviews, and then a few days later, you will have your interview date that you would be attending. As well as that, some colleges like to have these sorts of tests for particular subjects. So you could see there are subjects such as education, geography, history, HSPS, where some colleges would require you to sit an at-interview written assessment as well. So it's really important that you familiarize yourself with the course that you're applying to and the kind of assessments that are required for that course. In some cases, there will be a pre-admissions assessment, which I've listed in the subjects in the previous slide. In some cases, there will be a written assessment if you are shortlisted for an interview, and they are listed in this slide here. But as well as that, there are some subjects where certain colleges may have an at-interview assessment as well. And again, you need to look on the college website to see if a particular college has that requirement. To give you an example, at Downing, we do not require an at-interview assessment for subjects such as history and HSPS and maths.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, that's really helpful. Definitely go and have a look at the colleges' websites. So with all of these tests then, whether they're the kind of college registered ones or the pre-registration ones, what is the pass mark? Is there a certain sort of score that you have to get in each of the tests to be kind of considered and to kind of go further?
So there is no pass mark for any of these tests. The way they work is we take your marks, your raw marks, and then rank them against all the students who've sat that test. And then we rank all the students into certain percentiles, depending on how they perform against the gathered field.
Okay, that's really good to know. So obviously you want to do as well as you can in this. How is it best to prepare?
So like I mentioned before, a lot of resources are available online. Go on to the university website. There are lots of past paper questions, example papers there. And so download those papers, work through those papers, and make sure you can become familiar with the format of the assessment, and do carry these tests out under time conditions as well.
Yes, definitely, that's really important. So another part of the admissions process then is the My Cambridge application. Could you explain a little bit more about kind of why we asked for that and what goes into it?
So the My Cambridge application is really it's a portal that's been set up to allow applicants to upload more information about their application. So the key things we ask for are information such as what sort of modules you've studied so far in your A-level course. This sort of information isn't provided on the UCAS form. The UCAS form will say you are studying certain A-levels, but it won't tell us about what modules you have studied so far as part of your A-level. And the reason why we ask for that information is if you are invited for an interview, what we want to be able to do is to be able to have an understanding of what you've learned so far at school or college. And then when we are asking interview questions, we can base those questions around previous knowledge which you've already gained. So that's one thing that really helps us when we are reviewing your applications. The other thing that will happen on your My Cambridge application is we would ask you to upload a passport style photograph of yourself. And that's really important that you upload a good picture of yourself on this application form, because it allows us to identify you if you are invited for an interview, to make sure the person who's applied is the person who's sitting in front of us. The other thing to notice, if you do make an application to the university, make sure you supply a good photograph of yourself. Because what would happen if you do get selected for an offer and eventually make your offer and come to study at university, we will be using that same photograph on your university ID cards. So if it's not a photo you're not very happy with, please make sure that you pick one that you can see yourself in on a photo ID for the next 3 years of your undergraduate degree.
Definitely important. So I can see extenuating circumstances is also listed there. What sort of things might they be, and should candidates tell us about any extenuating circumstances?
So in the form, we do try and capture as much information as we can. And one of the key things we are very, very conscious of, that students sometimes have circumstances which impact their education. And so if there's anything that's happened that's impacted your academic studies, it could be your health, it could be a family bereavement, it could be personal circumstances which have impacted your family life. If there's anything like that which has impacted your studies, we want to know about that, because we want to be able to take that into consideration when reviewing your application.
Brilliant, that's good to know that that's taken into account, and please do let us know anything if there is anything that's going on. I can also see that second person statement is up there. What is this? Is this something that every student has to do or not?
I mean, it's optional. If you would like to make a particular short personal statement and put it together for your application, in particular for Cambridge, there is the opportunity for you to do that. When you write your personal statement on UCAS, it's going to be a generic personal statement which will be used for all your university applications. But in certain situations, if you wanted to highlight key things about why you're applying to Cambridge, you can use this second personal statement box for that. To give you an example, if you're a student which is really interested in chemistry, you can't apply for chemistry at Cambridge. You would have to apply for natural sciences. And so you might write a personal statement which is talking about chemistry, but when you write your personal statement for for your Cambridge application, you might want to tell us a few things about what is it particular about the natural sciences course which has attracted you to apply to it at Cambridge. So there is that opportunity to write that as a personal statement. Other examples include land economy. You may be applying for economics at many other universities, but you are particularly interested in land economy, then you could talk about what is it that in particular that you're interested in and wanting to study land economy at the University of Cambridge.
Brilliant, that's really helpful. Thank you for going through that. So I know some colleges for some subjects ask for written work. Could you talk a little bit more about what you expect to see in the written work and what should students need to submit?
Yeah, so written work is requirement for many of the arts and humanities subjects. And what we've asked for in these written work submissions is an essay that you have done as part of your A-level studies so far at school. You typically would ask for 2 essays to be submitted in, and we would request that students pick essays which have been marked by their school teachers. And another thing I always advise students is that if they have got feedback from their teachers, if there are any suggested improvements that they would make subject after receiving that feedback, to include another supplementary sheet with that essay to talk about what would be the key things they would improve or add to the essay once they've taken that, once reflecting on the feedback they've received from their teachers. What are we looking for when we are reviewing these essays? We're looking for your ability to articulate and write well. We want to see how well you can structure an essay, an argument, and really see how you've gone about researching a particular topic area as well.
Brilliant. So what kind of advice would you give for students when kind of choosing which essays they've got? Because they've probably got quite a few. What are the sort of things to think about?
So the key thing you need to do is pick essays that you are very confident to talk about. That's one thing, because sometimes these essays will, if you are invited for an interview, will be used as a discussion point in your interviews. The other thing is to pick essays which actually reflect your true capabilities in terms of your writing skills and your analytical skills. So pick essays which are good examples of your work and your quality of work, but also ones which you are going to talk about topics which you are very passionate about.
Brilliant, that's helpful. So I guess the next thing is just the last part of the admissions process, which is the interview. So often this is the part that candidates are most worried about. So could you talk a little bit more about kind of what interviews are like and what they're going to expect?
Okay, so as I mentioned right at the beginning of the talk, once we've reviewed everyone's applications, we then make a decision about who we want to invite for interviews. For the first thing I want to say, why do we carry out interviews? We normally carry out interviews is because at this point in the application process, we have a large pool of applicants which are extremely competitive, and they will all have got outstanding grades, have performed very well in any kind of assessments, have shown very good academic ability in the submitted written work that they've sent through. And we now need to be able to differentiate between these applicants. And this is why we do the interviews. Now, these interviews normally take place in early December and are conducted by the college and by subject specialists, academics who are specialists in the subjects you're applying for. Now, at depending on which college you apply to and the subject you apply to, you may end up having 2 interviews which are around 20 to 30 minutes long, or you may end up having 1 long interview which would maybe 40 minutes long. In each case, you would have at least 2 academics there who will be interviewing you in each one of those interviews. And as I mentioned before, they're carried out by people who are subject specialists, and therefore the discussion that takes place in these interviews is predominantly academic and subject focused. So the next thing is, what do we look for at an interview? And a lot of students are asked this question. And the key thing is, we're really looking for key sorts of sort of criteria we're trying to assess you on. So one thing is your enthusiasm for your chosen subject, How passionate are you about your subject, the subject you've applied to? How committed are you to that subject? We want to be able to see if we can bring you into a discussion where we can actually assess that. What we also want to do is see how you handle new information, complex information, and look at solving problems that you've not seen before. So your ability to work through new complex ideas and challenges is one thing we're really interested in exploring with you in the interview. We want to see how you can use the knowledge you've already gained so far in your academic studies as well, and see how you can apply it to an unfamiliar situation, something that you've not come across before. In many of the science interviews, you will be presented with a problem to solve, and the problem will be using knowledge you've gained so far through your maths course or your physics course or your chemistry course at school or college. We also want to be able to see how you can experiment with new ideas and see how you can connect, make connections between different information that's been provided to you. So what would happen in an interview is we'd ask you to look at a problem, or we'd ask you to discuss a topic area, but then also give you key bits of information and see how you can use that information to present us with an argument or a discussion or an answer to the problem that you've been presented with. Last thing is in your professional and interpersonal skills, and for certain subjects, this is really important. You know, subjects such as medicine, what we will be doing in the interviews is really trying to assess, are you going to be a good doctor? Do you have the right attributes, skills and people skills really to become someone who would be a good doctor, who can have some empathy and be able to relate to, be able to talk and communicate well with different types of patients. The overall arching thing in the interview process is really we're trying to assess how suitable you are for the course. Are you a good fit for the course? And how teachable are you? Are you someone who will be able to cope with the teaching style that Cambridge uses to teach their undergraduates? And so on that point, one thing that students always obviously are very interested in finding out is what to expect at the interview. Now, the interview, as I mentioned, is going to be a discussion. So they will go through maybe some recent work that you've done, i.e. if you submitted some written work, they may go through those essays and have a much more detailed discussion about it. They may look at some of the arguments you presented in your essay, or some of your opinions that you've come to after researching a topic. They may try and challenge you on that and have a debate with you on that. There may be a situation where they ask you to read a piece of literature half an hour before your interview, and then in the interview, go through a discussion about what you've taken, what you've interpreted, or what you've understood from the literature you've read. And again, go into a discussion where you are looking at interpreting the information or providing a critical review of the piece of the literature that you've read. In many cases, they may actually present you with some visual images, or they may present you with some data or some graphs or some statistics and go into a discussion about what that information that they're presenting you talks about, what does it tell you, and how does that relate to a particular problem or question that they want to present you with. So hopefully this is really kind of gives you an idea of what to expect. So to kind of summarize, if you come for an interview for one of the science subjects, you'll be asked to look at a problem to solve. And if you come for an arts and humanities sort of interview, broadly speaking, you'll be asked to provide an interpretation or a discussion on a topic area, and basically bring your own opinions about a particular subject area as well. The last thing is how to prepare for your interview. It's really important to read around your subject area and go beyond the scope of the course that you're beyond what you studied so far in your A-level course or your IB course at school or college. So really read around your subject area and broaden your context around your subject area. Be much more applied about how your thought process on how you can use what you've learned so far at school or college and apply it to things that you've read around or you've been researching around in the subject area you're interested in. So key thing is, if you're, especially for an arts and humanities subject, develop your own opinions and interpretations about a particular topic. If you're interested in, for example, history, read through the literature and read through a lot of articles, or listen to certain podcasts and see how people interpret information and draw opinions from it, and see how you can use those skills to draw your own opinions about subject area. Last thing I always say is talk about your subject area and have discussions with people who are non-subject specialists as well. It's really key to be able to break down your understanding about a particular topic and be able to articulate it to an audience which isn't a subject specialist and get them to understand it. And so if you can develop those skills, that would really help you when you come for an interview as well. Last thing, look through your personal statement. Number of times applicants talk about things in their personal statement and are not prepared to then have a discussion about this in the interview. So it's really important to think through what you've written in your personal statement and make sure you're confident to talk through information that you provided in your personal statement and submit written work.
Definitely. Thank you so much for kind of covering that. I really think this is going to be so useful to students kind of to understand kind of what we're looking for when it comes to an interview. I know a lot of students will be thinking about how the interviews are actually going to be conducted this year. So are they going to be online or in person?
So over the last 3 years, the interviews have been online, mainly because of the concerns with COVID. However, over this 3-year period, we have come to realize that in many cases, interviews online have been preferred by many applicants. So the university right now is in discussion, and they are going to be making a decision soon about this over the summer, about whether they're going to go back into in-person interviews or continue doing interviews online. There may be a situation where we might go back in person for certain subjects, but that's all up for discussion right now, and we haven't made a decision.
Brilliant, thanks for kind of filling us in on that. And I know similar to the personal statements that there's loads of kind of resources on our website and across the university as well to help with preparing for interview. So students have gone through the whole application process, they've completed their interview, and there's nothing more for them to do at that point. But some students may go through the winter pool process. Could you explain actually what that is? Because students won't be aware of what that is.
Yeah. So the winter pool process is a process which the university goes through, and all the colleges do this in collaboration, where we compare our pool of applications against the gathered field. To kind of put that into more context, what we're trying to achieve is the most competitive applicant getting an offer to a Cambridge college. Now, how does that work? Let's go through an example. At Downing, we have only a limited number of places that we can offer for medicine, for example. At Downing, we look to admit 16 students in medicine. We typically have around about 100 or plus applicants who apply to us. And once we receive their application and reviewed their applications and looked through their BMAT scores, we may end up interviewing around 80 of those applicants. After interviewing 80 applicants, we may actually have a pool of 25 that we think are outstanding and should be considered for an offer. But we can only offer to 16 students. So therefore, the remaining students, which are going to be around about 9 students, we would put in the winter pool, where other colleges, which are still looking for applicants in medicine, could then review those applications and make them offers. But what we also do is take our bottom 8 from our 16 and also put that into the pool as well. Because what we want to make sure is our top 16 the most competitive against the gathered field? And if it isn't, we will look to pick up a candidate from the winter pool and swap some of our candidates for other candidates which have been pooled by other colleges. And the whole idea behind this is, as I said before, is to try and provide an opportunity for the best applicant, the most competitive applicant being considered and offered a place at Cambridge. So when you apply to the university, if you've made an application to a particular college, there could be a number of outcomes to your application in January. The outcome could be you have an offer from the college you applied to, if you've been interviewed. And you could have an offer from another college which has picked you up from the winter pool. And the third sort of scenario could be you're unsuccessful, unfortunately, and your application won't be taken any further.
That's really reassuring to know, especially if you are applying to a college that is really they're all very oversubscribed and all very competitive, but for a particular course, if you are worried, that this process is in place. So that's really helpful to know. So throughout the whole admissions process then, what are you actually using to assess the application? What's got the most weighting? A lot of the time students will feel that their interview is sort of the final hurdle, and if they've got to that point, then everything is weighted on that. Is that true or not?
That's not true at all. We use a number of criteria when we're reviewing your application, and in this slide here, I've tried to highlight some of the key things that we are looking through when we are reviewing applications. Like I mentioned before, academic track record. We'll be seeing how you performed so far in your academic work, and that could include how you performed in your GCSEs. We'll be reading through your personal statement, and as I mentioned in the previous slides, we'll be looking for suitability, motivation, and enthusiasm for your subject area when we read you through your personal statements. We'll be looking at your teacher's reference, and in the teacher's reference, we'll be looking at for information about what the teacher has to say about you. Are you an outstanding student? Are you one of the best students in the class that the school has? We'll be looking at your test scores. If you sat a pre-admissions assessment or an at-interview assessment, we'll be looking at how you performed in the test, and we will see how your scores compare against the gathered field. Submitted written work, if that's required for you, the course that you've applied to, any extenuating circumstances which has impacted your academic studies so far, as well as how you performed at the interview. So all of these things are looked at and considered as part of the application. No one part is given more weight than the other. It's all taken into account, and there's a holistic approach used to make a decision about each application. I can't emphasize this enough. Every application is reviewed and assessed on an individual basis before we make a decision. And to kind of put that into context, we may have an applicant which has got outstanding school reference, fantastic personal statement, very good test scores, but then when they came for the interview, didn't do as well. That doesn't mean that they won't have an offer. It could have been they just had a very bad day at the interview. So we look at all the other information. If the other information clearly suggests you're an extremely competitive applicant, then we still may consider you for an offer. Another example, someone's got fantastic school reference, fantastic academic track record, but didn't do as well as the tests as they should have done according to the information we have so far about them. That doesn't mean we still won't shortlist them for an interview. And if we do interview them and they do very well in the interview, we may still consider them for an offer.
That's really helpful to know that it's a holistic process and that it is based on the individual. Thank you for that. So you've mentioned and touched on these things already before, but what are you actually looking for in applicants sort of specifically, and are things that aren't going to have any weigh in on the application?
Yeah. So just to kind of summarize that, what we're looking for when we are reviewing applications is academic ability and potential. We'll be looking at, do you meet the subject requirements? Do you have a genuine interest in the subject area? How motivated and enthusiastic are you about the subject? Have you really researched the subject you want to apply to university? And the last thing is how suitable you are for the chosen course. And are you going to be someone who will do well and thrive and do well in a teaching environment at Cambridge? The sorts of things we're not really interested in, or we do not take as part of our consideration, is any kind of extracurricular activities. So if you play for the under-18 England football squad, as my example I always give, it doesn't mean that that will be taken into consideration for your application. It's extremely impressive that you're competing in a sport on such a competitive level, but it's not formed as part of any of your assessment to the university. Other things such as your school and your background, they have no relevance to your application. We are just looking to rank our candidates on academic merit, and that's our benchmark criteria we use to evaluate and make decisions about applications.
Brilliant. That's really good to hear as well. So thank you so much for going through sort of the whole application process, sharing insight into it. So for candidates who are watching this video, potential candidates who are watching this video, is there anything that they can do now, or what should they be doing now, and kind of thinking about making an application in the near future?
So how to support your future. I mean, the key thing is what you should be doing now is start thinking about the course that you want to study. Like I mentioned before, spend a lot of time looking through the courses on offer at the university and researching them. Make sure you pick the right course that really fits your interests. The other thing is find out what you enjoy with supercurricular activities. Really look around what sort of resources are available online or events that are happening that allow you to explore your subject area in a much more broader context. The other thing is look out for other opportunities, see if there is a course that's running, see if there is a program that's happening at the university, which you can apply to and attend to, which will allow you to then broaden your context around the subject area.
Brilliant. So yeah, lots of things that students can be doing. For those who aren't familiar with the term supercurricular, could you maybe give a few examples of what be included in supercurricular activities?
So supercurricular activities are ones where you are exploring your subject area. And there's lots of ways you can do this. You can attend talks, you can look through podcasts, you can do wider reading around your subject area. You can join certain academic societies where they're exploring a certain subject area in more detail. You can go on trips. Many of the schools and colleges will be organizing trips for students to explore the subject area that they've been learning about so far at school in a much more broader context. You can also look at participating in competition and challenges, such as Olympiads, if you're thinking of applying for a science subject. And you can participate in a number of types of competitions which are on offer on a national and international level as well.
Brilliant. And have you got any sort of suggestions of places students can look?
So, like I said, there's lots of resources available online. And there's some examples of resources you can look through, which are available via the internet. You can look at, if you're interested in studying natural sciences, you can look at Nature and New Scientist, which are very good journals that provide information about some of the current research that's happening around a certain subject area. And here, what you can actually see is how something you've learned so far in chemistry or biology, and how that's been applied to a particular application. If you're thinking of applying for subjects such as economics, you should be looking at reading The Economist. If you're thinking of applying to HSPS, you should be reading The Economist, because looking at what's happening on a global political front is very important, and being up to date with current affairs would be very, very important. Examples of the British Medical Journal is a very good example to see how people who are thinking of applying for medicine could keep up with information and current sort of research and activities happening around the medical field. So these are just some examples of the type of resources available and how you can engage in them. And the key thing is, this is allowing you to be very applied in your thought process and seeing how what you've learned so far at school is being applied to a particular application or problem, or being applied to in a particular context. And what this really does is get your mind thinking in that sort of format. And when you come for a Cambridge interview, these are the sorts of things we're going to be exploring with you and assessing you on at the interview during your, if you are invited for one.
Yeah, it's definitely going to help you at interview for sure. On the university website as well, there is a list of supercurricular activities by subject. It's not a tick list, it's just suggestions of places to start looking. And there's so much free resources out there. So I just want to make sure that people don't feel the need or the pressure to pay for any of these supercurricular activities. There are so many free stuff on our website, on the university website, and just generally online as well. Brilliant, thank you so much, Cam, that's really helpful. So if students want to kind of find out more, they can head to the Downing College website. We've got a number of our current students on there who are on the Ambassador platform, and you can chat to them about any questions that you have about the courses particularly, or life at Downing, or the application process as we've been discussing today. And you can see lots of things from their kind of student life here as well. If you've got any questions, having watched this video, please feel free to email us with the email address on the screen, and our admissions officer will be more than happy to get back to you with any questions that you have. So the last thing to say is just a massive thank you to Dr. Cameron Eunice, our admissions tutor, for his time today going through all of that, and I really hope that you've all found it really helpful, and the best of luck with any applications that you put in the future.
Thank you everybody for your time, and best of luck with your applications.